the Legal Corner podcast series. Welcome to today's episode of The Legal Corner, a podcast which covers a variety of legal issues to keep you informed. Hosted by attorney-at-law Colin Denoon and communications specialist Leonardo Torres. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Legal Corner podcast series. In today's episode, we'll be looking at life on and off the bench. This is our last episode in season 1, and it has been a nice long journey for over 24 episodes throughout the last year and a few months. And today we actually have a very distinguished guest who will be joining us on this episode where we'll be closing off season 1. Unfortunately, my co-host Colin Denoon will be unavailable today due to work constraints. But, you know, the show goes on and we will join him again at early next month or so when we resume our program with season 2. Today's episode is Life on and Off the Bench. Our distinguished guest today is former Senior Magistrate Mrs. Lucina Cadenas-Ragoonanan. Mrs. Cadenas-Ragoonanan will be sharing her story with us and will provide some insight into key milestones of her career. Just to tell you a bit more about Mrs. Lucina Cadenas-Ragoonanan, she's a former magistrate with the Judiciary of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. She's currently in private practice and is also certified as a mediator for both civil and criminal matters. She was called to the bar in 1986, and before retiring in June 2018, she was the senior presiding magistrate of the Family Court, which was at the time the pilot project in Trinidad and Tobago. In 1993, she was also the chairman of the Adoption Board. And even after that, she was promoted, or appointed rather, as a magistrate. And in 2004, after serving just 7 years, she was promoted senior magistrate. She was also a past president of the Magistrate Association and also acted deputy chief magistrate from time to time throughout her tenure. We are very pleased and happy to have this very distinguished member of the legal fraternity here with us today. I'm going to bring her in any minute now, but before we begin, this episode really is about, as we mentioned before, her life on and off the bench. And what is interesting about it for our listeners today, they will get an idea of her achievements, her different the many different hats she had to wear throughout her tenure, as well as how that experience was, as well as what made her decide to become an attorney and to, of course, climb to these levels that many attorneys would probably never achieve within their entire lifetime. And I'm going to bring her on now. Good afternoon, Miss Lucina Cadenas-Ragoonanan. How are you doing today?
I'm fine. Good afternoon to you, Leonardo. And can I call you Leonardo? Yes?
Of course you can.
First of all, let me wish you a very happy new year. And of course, all the best for the coming year. Safety, health, prosperity, of course, and good blessings.
Thank you very much. And we wish you the same. And again, we thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us today. So let's jump right into today's topic. You are a former senior magistrate.
Yes.
Right? Can you tell us, in your own words, what were the early days of your career like?
Okay, well, let me just go back a little bit, because before I joined the magistracy, the judiciary, after graduating from the University of the West Indies, I also attended at Barbados, because in those days, we would go 2 years in Barbados before we can qualify. So it was 1 year here and then 2 years in Barbados and then 2 years here at the Hewarding Law School. After I came out, I Now, this is a very little interesting little thing, and I'm going to tell you, which much people don't know. But I decided, you know what, I'm not going straight into out there at all. I'm just going to take a little year off and see where I'm going. And I decided, I'm sorry, this is before I went to university. I decided that, you know what, I'm going to apply to be an air hostess. So I signed up to be an air hostess with BWE, and I did all the training. Of course, I passed all of my interviews, and here we are getting ready to be called. And there went BWE into some trouble. They had they closed down BWE. So okay, no way, you're not going to go there again. I said, all right, no problem. What shall I do now? I was reading the newspapers and I saw there was an advertisement in a Naparima for Naparima boys, a history teacher, a teacher. I am 18 years or 19 years at the time. Huh? And I said, well, you know what, I can do that. So I drove up to the school and I went to the principal, who was then Mr. Mackenzie. And I said to Mr. Mackenzie, he asked, what are you doing here? I said, well, you know, I saw you had an advertisement and I thought maybe I can come and teach. So he said, is that right? I said, yes. Well, I've just finished my A-levels. I haven't received results yet, but maybe I can do this. He said, okay, well, when do you want to start? I said, well, do you want me to come now or what? And he said, well, no, you'll come tomorrow. And there began me teaching boys from 1 to 5, from 1s to 5, history of all the things in the world. Now, I'm telling you this because that background of history played a great, great part in I would say, my success. And I do believe I have been successful in my ability to read and understand and have a greater knowledge of the world and how things were and how they are now. And, you know, as well as my interaction with lots of young people. So there began my interaction with young people from a different perspective, not just as friends or hanging around people, but imparting some kind of knowledge to them, which I must pat myself on the back because I didn't do too badly. At the end of it all, they did pass their history, despite the many distractions they may have had at the time, because I was one of the youngest new girl that came into town. Nevertheless, and I'm also proud to say that quite a few of my students, I see them now, and they can't believe it. I said, oh my God, I can't recognize you. They recognize me and I don't recognize them, and they're in some good positions in the country. I'm proud of them. Needless to say, I went on to do law, and then I always felt I started my practice in San Fernando. I first was called as a solicitor. In those days, there was solicitors, and not there was a division in terms of solicitors as opposed to barristers, who would have been advocates, those persons that go and argue in the court. The solicitors would prepare the documentation, file, and then the advocates would go in and argue. Of course, sometime thereafter, we became attorneys at law, which would mean there is no distinction. You can do both. Once you have a practicing certificate, you come out there and you can practice whichever way you want. I had been doing quite a bit of magistrates court matters, mainly family maintenance, custody, and things like that, and attended that court. And I really felt a little bit, I don't want, it's not sad, but I was very concerned, I would say. Concerned because I felt that a lot of people weren't getting justice. I felt that they were not really being heard, particularly the women, quite as much the men. I'm not casting any aspersions at all on the officers, the judicial officers, but the system somehow did not seem to allow for real justice to take place. So I always felt, to my gosh, if I was on top there, I would not do that. I would try to see how fair I can be. And this sort of prompted me in my mind, where can I make this difference? Because even though I might have been representing people in my own private capacity, there's not more, you can't do more than that, because it's always left, of course, to the judicial officer. He or she has the power to do many things. And after a while, I decided I would apply to be a magistrate. I was actually encouraged by quite a few prominent, well-read and well-thought persons. I wouldn't name any names because I don't want people to think that I'm singling out anybody. But the late Mrs. Lynette Maraj was very instrumental, as well as Mr. Basdev Pandey, who I was being at Kelshol and Company. He was one of the advocates for them, and so we had a good relationship in terms of the work, and they did recommend me. And yes, I got the job. One of the questions that from the committee, the judicial committee, one of the judges was Mr. Gaya Prasad, and he asked me, why do you want to come here? Why do you want to be on the bench? And I said, well, I feel that I could do a little bit more justice here. I feel that I want to be fair, and I feel that there's not enough of that. And that has been my mantra. That has been how I've operated to date. I think fairness is the most important thing. However you go, wherever you go, you need to be fair to both sides, whoever they are. So it's in the beginning, I would say that it was challenging because you know what, you're coming into a whole new world. You're now meeting you didn't realize how many bad things there are out there, how many maybe bad people that there are out there, but more importantly, that circumstances were bad for many people. And a lot of times, it was very difficult, either not being able to have the support or the finances or the wherewithal to solve a lot of these problems. It's, of course, the society. And as time went by, there was a need to introduce much more accessibility to justice, as we would call it, more social interventions, many, many, many more programs, trainings, workshops that would allow for people to be able to access justice properly and also to improve their conditions. Because, everybody can't be the king. Everybody can't be the man on the street. However, it will apply to all, because at some point in time, you don't know what life is going to bring to you. So that it would have been challenging, and because I'm very passionate, I think I've sort of toned down now. But in the first few years, I was very passionate about these things. I would get really upset if I see that things are not happening and why you're not doing this and so on. And maybe a little bit impatient because, of course, I don't rule the world. There's so many things, so many different inputs that come in there to make something happen. And sometimes they would be moving too slow for me. But I learned that no, that's not the way. You just gotta plod on, get your message across, but allow others, I suppose, to do what they need to do. So generally, I would say it's very, very satisfying. I will not change it. If I had to go back and do it again, I will do the same, possibly with a little few changes here and there, maybe in terms of my attitude in the very beginning. I may not have been too hasty, but I've always maintained, as I said before, that element of fairness. I think it's so important because it brings such a different result. Because if you're in a position of power, you have power. I had quite a big power. So I could decide, I'm deciding lives, I'm deciding what's going to happen to you. And therefore, I could wield that power any way I want. Granted, it must be within the law. But nevertheless, whatever I do impacts upon you, negatively or positively. So I always try to bring that balance, to reach to you, not because you've come and sat before the court because you've committed an offense, but why are you here? Something has happened. Yes, you may have done it. Yes, but in my mind, I'm always thinking, why? Why couldn't it be something different? And I was never afraid to ask you why. Some people didn't like it. Some feel that you need not have, why do you want to bring, be on that same level? In a sense, I mean, it's sad to be talking about levels, but you're in a different position. But I always felt that that's the only way that you can really relate and communicate with someone, if you sit and you have a talk. So when the family court, the whole idea of the family court came into being, I really am so happy and proud to know that I was part of that beginning in 2004-05. And I was one of the first senior magistrates to sit in the family court in Port of Spain. And the way the court was fashioned is that we sit on a table and we all sit around the table. So there was nobody sitting on the top there and loading or down to you. We all sat on the same level. We can talk to each other, of course, respectfully. And people, the reaction to this was tremendous. It allowed people to feel happy, to know that they can talk to that person there to whom they have come for help. Because really and truly, especially in family matters, it's because there are things that are happening in a home. People are feeling sad, they're not getting this or no maintenance and things like that. Unfortunately, a lot of the men were being brought to the court. It's a sad thing, but I will tell you, and I've said it over and I will continue to say it, that sometimes we leave the men out a little bit, which I think is absolutely not right. It's not fair, because men are people. Men are fathers of children. Men have just as much stress, just as much conditions that may not be favorable for them to be able to really truly perform as fathers and so on. I'm not saying that because there are those who really, they're totally delinquent. But then again, I am willing to go even far to say, well, there's a reason for that too. Maybe where you come from, you're not exposed to that. Maybe your parents were this way, so therefore, what have you learned? So you only do the same thing that you have learned in that situation. It applies to women too. So the whole idea, as I said, is for us to be able to talk to each other. We must be able to talk to each other. So my experiences throughout, I will say I have not regretted a day. I am very happy. I'm very passionate. I have retired, and to be honest, I thought when I retired that I would, just lay back and do nothing. I did so for a year. And then I said, wait a minute. No. You got to do some things. Of course, people started wanting to know, what are you doing? And there it began. So right now I do have a practice, mainly family and so. And the thing about this time is, although we've put a lot of the systems in place to make things better, it is not there yet. There is so much more to be done. I don't mean at all to bash the system, but I feel that the system there needs to be a lot more to be done. And the system can't work by itself. It must work with the people. So the people need to do, I think, or to have a different perspective in the sense that, why am I having this system here? Is it to say that we've improved and we have a lot of new courts and things looking good? We seem to modernize the situation, or is it to bring greater relief, more accessibility to people, to solve, or try at least to solve their problems as much as we could by giving them the resources and giving them the solutions as much as we could, because things like counseling and so is so important. And as you would know, we are seeing so many things happening with homes, domestic violence, children. It really saddens my heart, because children, we need to protect them more. We need to protect our children more, because think about it. If we don't protect our children, what is going to happen? We are going to leave. What is there for them? How are they going to cope? Granted, the whole life now is very different from what we knew it to be, and maybe they would adjust the suit. But what is the quality of that life? And I think it is our duty to make that life much better than we had it, and much better than it is now. I really, really feel so, and I think it's a lot to do with parents, how they are perceiving things and taking a different look at as to their parenting as not. I mean, it's not very easy to say, let's say, a young woman or young man, even, you're a parent, you're not married, you have limited resources. It's very, very difficult. It's a lot of stress going on here. It's a tall order to ask you, look, forget about yourself. Really, you have to try to forget about yourself and say, look, I have my child. how do I make it better for them? I know I'm having a lot of problems, but what is my child going to face if I don't do as much as possible to help, to put them in to lay that foundation so that they cannot be going through maybe what I'm going through. So, I can talk forever about it. It's nothing that is going to stop. It's not going to stop because, as you know, the world is changing so much, and we really do need to know. So, where I am now, I would like to continue the work that I think I've been doing. I have no intentions of stopping it. I'm always available, always ready to help where I can because I think it's necessary. People don't come and ask you for help if they don't want help.
All
And
right.
I think people should ask a little bit more
I
for help.
agree. I agree. And I like that you would have mentioned that, you started in San Fernando because as a son of the soil myself and a San Fernandian, as you would
Yeah.
know,
Yes.
um, San Fernando is a very small, close-knit community. So I do know of you, even as a child going to school, that you were a magistrate, right?
Yes.
So you would see, the primary school that I went to, right opposite us was the courthouse. That's
Yes.
about a street away. So,
Yes.
you
Correct.
always see commotion and action. So I think most people within that time would have been exposed to law by just the face of it, what it looks like, what the activity rather outside the courthouse. But talk to me a bit about when you transitioned from you would have mentioned that you started off as a solicitor, then it
Yes.
went on to, of course, you were attorney after that, and then of course you would have become a magistrate soon after that. I would have been in 1994,
Yes.
right? How was that um, experience for you in terms of you now being on the other side of things, in terms of that deciding factor? Can you speak to us about that human element in terms of you deciding if this person should probably just pay a small fine,
Yeah.
reprimand and discharge, or probably spend 10, 20 years in jail? How was that as a human dealing with?
Well, we would have learned, and we would have learned this from training, from school, from the university, from the law school, that what you have to do is listen to the facts. So if a person comes and you listen to the facts are always married to the law. You have to marry the facts with the law. Whatever is brought to the court will be pursuant to some law. And if the facts are spelling out that you are in breach of the law, etc., there are remedies that are given, there are penalties that are given in order to deal with it, to come to a conclusion of a matter. However, it does not mean that you're going to go hard and fast to say, well, this is the offense committed, this is the law, this is the penalty, so that you do this. No. In my view, we need to listen to the why. So I've always felt that way from way back when. So moving as a solicitor, presenting a case, let's say, I would be presenting my facts on my side. However, I am presenting it to the magistrate who has to listen to both sides and come to the relevant conclusion at the end of the day. Now I am the person listening to those facts. So now I have to listen to both sides. But there has to be a balance. There must be a balance that has to be taken into consideration in respect of how you're going to come to make a decision. So it's not, I mean, for me, it was not a difficult thing because I've always had in the back of my mind, there are two sides to a story. I might be saying this, but of course there's another side to the story. And when you're giving those stories to the magistrate, that person is going to has to listen to both sides, has to apply the law accordingly. And, well, there are lots of things of balance of probabilities. Of course, evidence must be able to surely corroborate and support whatever it is you're saying. So it's a process. It's a thinking process where you apply the law, you use the facts, you have the evidence, and then you come to your conclusion at the end of it all. The human part of things, well, you try to avoid too much of that, because of course that means that you have a preconceived notion of what something should be. So therefore it can always be said that maybe you're prejudiced or maybe you're biased in it. So you have to kind of get that kind of balance when it is not appearing to be so. It's a sort of something that you have to develop and to learn. And I think it also is very important for your own idea or concept of fairness whenever it is that you're doing any matter, when you're applying yourself to any matter, despite there's the law, but you have to be fair. Fairness is sort of incorporated in it, because even if you see something and the evidence is being produced, you can't say, well, I feel sorry for you, so therefore I'm going to let you off. No, you're going to say, well, I find based on the facts that you are guilty of it. But tell me something. Why should I not send you to jail for 2 years? Because, there are things like that. It starts off at a reprimand and discharge, as you indicated. I will forgive you in a sense and I'll let you go. Or I could give you the maximum and let you go to jail. So there is a range that you can do. But that range is dependent on what you're going to be presenting. The facts, or if it was by mistake, or if you're sorry, or, there's so many different things that will impact on it. So for me, that transition was not very difficult. And I wouldn't say that it came right away, because of course, people can present things so well that it's easy to believe. So you had to learn to read between the lines. You have to learn to listen very carefully. And, because a lot of times in evidence, people say one thing, and then when you tell them, you speak with them again, or you ask certain questions, you hear something else, and you say, well, no. But it's something that you have to develop. It does not come right away. It cannot. It's just natural. So that transition for me, to be honest, I don't find it difficult. I've not, and I'll say it again, never found my job. I felt it as not only a job, but for me it was a labor of love, a labor of wanting justice for everybody. And so I never really felt, look, I can't take this job no more. I don't like that. I've not felt that way. I just wanted to learn more to be able to do more. That's how I felt. I think you would have seen from my series the amount of training, the amount of workshop, because I wanted to be part of that, to have that knowledge and information, to know how to deal with the situations as you go along.
So at this point, we'll be taking a quick commercial break. Stay with us. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. So right before the break, we were discussing with our guest, Mrs. Lucina Cadenas-Ragoonanan, and we were talking to her about, the early days of her career, her life throughout being a magistrate, and some of the human elements and that personal journey that she would have had to go through to be able to become the magistrate that she was. And now that we are in the last segment of our program today, we wanted to just get an idea of having become a senior magistrate in 2001. I mean, I guess there would have been a lot more responsibility on that role. Can you just talk to us briefly on what that elevation means?
Yes. It means that you would have somewhat of an administrative role to play, apart from the sitting in courts, because all magistrates are equal in terms of sitting in courts. But as a senior magistrate now, you are in charge, in a sense, of the district in which you are. So the other magistrates, don't want to use it under you, but other magistrates in that same district normally we would have, not that they're reporting, but it's like, that if you do have to do performance appraisals and so on, the senior magistrate would be the one to, give the reports and make the recommendations, if possible, for promotion, if that is required. But I can't say that was a big part of it. It just shows that you have years that you're there. I think that it's a question of competency, trust on behalf of the administrators, that you could be in a different position with a little bit more power, because as a senior magistrate, there are certain particular committees that you are required to be on that only a senior magistrate could be on. So in that case, then you would be there. It is just really a question of years service too. Granted, I became one in 6-7 years time, which I suppose was quick, but I guess they would have known why. I just continued to do my work. But it also came with a little bit more responsibility to ensure that the system was working in the judiciary, because we do have to account for those other magistrates who are in your district as well. Sometimes you offer a little guidance because you remember they are coming. Sometimes new persons coming in would sit with you. They were allowed to sit with you to see how the procedure. You would be very familiar with the procedure, which is very important, of course, in the courts. Procedure is extremely important, especially in the criminal courts, because that's mainly what the magistrates' court would deal with, the criminal courts. So as well as senior magistrate, you would usually sit in the courts that carry the what we call the indictable offenses. That's murders, homicides, rapes, the ones that are, the very, very serious crimes. But you would have covered all of the courts, because there were times when I sat in every single court that there is in Trinidad and Tobago. So it was a bit challenging too, because your brain had to be switching a mile a minute, but you also still have to have sound mind to be able to properly make your decisions, because these are very serious matters that you might be dealing with. The pay is a little better than a general magistrate. However, it was good.
All right. So we are going to. So I guess what we have touched on everything before was life on the bench,
Yes.
right? So now we are going to segue a little bit into life off the bench. So I've gotten a firm understanding from you that this job, or these different hats that you wore, they were a lot, right?
Mm.
They were different levels that you just alluded to earlier, where you would have been doing different matters and your mind had to switch at a mile a minute, right? But talk to us now about life off the bench. What activities were you involved in outside of magisterial responsibilities and your duties? And how did that, I don't want to say kept you grounded, but kept
Mhm.
you, just at a person where you can understand what is going on in society and that kind of thing. Talk to us a bit about that.
Yes. Well, as I would have indicated before, children, family is everything for me, because I come from a very big family. I come from a family of 10 children. I'm fourth to last, 7 boys, 3 girls. And we have a very close-knit family. I mean, they were always there, still are. And for me, even though I'm not on a bench, not doing that work, I still wanted to find the time to do things. So, for instance, schools. I would do a lot of motivational talks. I would do graduation speeches. I was involved at one point in time with the Save the Children Foundation, which the then Mayor of San Fernando, Mrs. and Atherley, had formed, and we had just gotten together. So we would go to the different schools and give talks about what the the law and child abuse, and unfortunately that was the time when there was the Sean Luke issue. And so it was ripe, it was in the air, and we felt that we needed to go out there and at least to explain some things and to give some hope to people, to know that you know, if things like these things are happening, you can reach out, you can reach to the social services, to the police, to whoever is available, even us, because we did have counselors there. So that was a big part of what I did outside of the magistracy. Now, of course, you know, you always have to be very careful because you don't want to appear as if you're in that position when you're out there. But it was purely giving information. It's not advising, not telling people how to do anything, but simply to give information. I was also chairman of the local school board for Marabella Junior Secondary, which was a very interesting time because, you know, in those days, the local school boards were really instituted to complement the administration of the schools through the Ministry of Education. It was really to try to see where there might have been issues in the school. Not that the principals and so on can't deal with it, but it was a little like a sort of closer link between the schools and the Ministry of Education, because the boards were formulated by the Ministry of Education. And it was interesting because then you had to liaise with the school in respect of what's going on, in respect of the things that were happening regarding maybe violence, the same questions of abuse and so on, but it's done in a different way, in that if these things are reported to you from the principal, you can then pass it on to the ministry so the ministry can have a better look at it. I think it was just another means, another way of trying to get, to find some of the solutions or to assist our interventions, to assist in that type of, with those issues. What else did I do? Well, I love singing and I like my carnival. These days I don't like it too much anymore. I'm probably getting too young. When I turned 50, I decided, well, I like to sing. I've always sung. I think I have a good enough voice. So I decided that I'll do 3 songs in a CD, which I did for
I
my
did not
50th.
know this, huh?
No, you did not. Lots of people don't know this. And that was it. So generally, you know, I continued to do as much as I could to assist with families or charities, things like that, where I think I can, you know, give people an avenue so that they can access maybe the social services or whoever it is that might be the best persons to help them. Yes.
All right. So as we begin to wind down, I just want to touch on one other thing. So in the introduction, I would have made mention of your retirement in June of 2018,
Yes.
right? Um, how was that experience like, coming off of the bench and now being John Public? If that applies to you, if that is what happens,
Mm-hmm.
and then how do you keep yourself busy as well? Now that you're in retirement, I know we talked about your private practice that you're
Yes.
doing in San Fernando as well.
Yeah.
But how was that transition for you?
Um. What shall I say? A little bittersweet because, of course, you are no longer in position. I mean, that's human. It's only human. However, you know, even before, whilst I was on a bench and whoever, and being a senior public figure, because I was a public figure, I never, if I have to go to the bank, I go and stand in the line. So when I came over the bench, I go and stand in the line. I mean, it's not my fault. You'll say, no, Mrs. Ragoonanan, don't stand in the line, come. okay, it comes with a job, I guess. So I felt a little sad because, this is what you've been doing for the last 25 and 26 years. I miss my friends. I made quite a number of friends. There were quite another of the other senior magistrates and the magistrates, although we kept in touch. And see, life is like this now, because now I appear before some of them. It feels a little odd in the first time, because I recall appearing before one magistrate and we wanted to laugh. I wanted to just laugh. I said, "Oh my God, here am I appearing for you." We did talk about it afterwards. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Nothing. We just go ahead as normal. And they've always been respectful. People respect me. I respect them. You know, and it's I can't say that it is anything traumatic. I quite enjoy um, my retirement. As you know, I stayed off for a year. I said no work, no nothing. A year, I'm just going to be home, enjoying my home, doing this and that. And then after the year ends, so many people started calling me, no, 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 you mustn't stay home. You need to do something. You need to do something. Fortunately, this is the career that never dies. You never retire from. An attorney at law is an attorney at law forever. Amen. So of course, financially, now you're not in a job, you're getting a pension, yes, but you need to work. And I am young. I don't feel myself old that I can't go out there and work. I can, and I'm doing it, and I'm very happy. I also am now able to put some of the things that I've learned. I think it's a little bit of an advantage in the sense that I know what it is over there and I know what it is here. So if a person comes, I say, look, listen, this is what it is. This is what I'm not going to fool you. You don't have a case, you have a case, etc., etc. And guide and do it the correct way. So for me, I get that satisfaction. And I want to know that people will be satisfied to know that they can. So in a sense, I'm continuing my job, continuing my work of allowing people to get justice and fairness at the end of the day, because that's what I would require when I present. I want that.
All right.
So
Thank you very
good.
much. So, as we begin to put down the curtain on today's episode and the season, actually,
Okay.
give us any closing statements, any positions, any insights, anything you want to share as we close today's episode.
I want to say particularly to the women of Trinidad and Tobago, in respect of your children, because this is something that I'm seeing quite a lot, and I do have to say it, with respect to your children, although you may be having great difficulty with the man, with the father of these children, it is not the best thing to prevent father from being the father, to prevent the children from having the accessibility to their father. No matter what it is, we must try. It's very difficult, especially if you're living in abusive situations. But we've got to try to find a way that we can allow our children to have the benefit of both parents, because it's extremely important for those children going forward. Women, unfortunately, I think it's because they're so sometimes caught up with the hurts and the pains that they're experiencing as a result of the father doing X, Y, or Z. They forget, or rather, they use the children to sort of get back at him. No, no, no. I want to say that is not what we ought to be doing. I would really pray and hope that you can find it in your heart to look a little different, look away from the person and look to your children. They deserve to have both of you in their lives so that they can benefit from them. And it's also giving the fathers an opportunity to be responsible, to take your responsibility seriously, and to do what you have for your children. So I ask fathers to do the same, take the responsibilities. I ask the women to give and allow fathers to take the responsibility of their children. And more importantly, for children to have the love, care, support of their parents, both parents. That is something that unfortunately I'm seeing. It's concerning to me. And I would really like for that to change.
I'm so happy that you said that, because I really think I wasn't expecting that. But in hearing you articulating it, it resonated well. It resonated well, and I agree with you 100%. All right. Now, unfortunately, we have come to the end of today's episode. Now, I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart on behalf of all of us at the Legal Corner podcast series. We really want to thank you for your time, for your wealth of experience and knowledge in the law. And I'm sure that whether an attorney was listening or an aspiring attorney was listening, there was a takeaway from today's episode. And I'm so happy that we were able to have such a rich conversation. And on behalf of the Legal Corner podcast series, we want to thank you and also congratulate you and wish you a happy retirement and a bright and prosperous 2023.
Thank you.
And again, thank you so much for being with us today.
Yes, thank you very much, Leonard. It was a pleasure and an honor to be able to speak. I do appreciate it.
Okay, folks, this has brought us to the end of today's episode and also our first season of the Legal Corner podcast series. Please stay tuned. We will be back in a matter of weeks with season 2. We are currently in the works of preparing a nice schedule and a nice layout of guests as we prepare for another season with more interesting topics, more insightful topics. And we just want to remind you as well to check us out on our social media handles. On Facebook, we are the Legal Corner Podcast Series. And on Instagram, we are the Legal Corner Podcast. We are also on Patreon if you are interested in supporting our work. If you enjoyed this episode, we would like to ask you to share it with your friends and family. Feel free to leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Podchaser or wherever you listen to your podcasts. We would also like if you subscribe to our podcast so you won't miss any of our future episodes. Special thanks to the members of our promotional team who are helping us to get our message out. Bye for now, and God bless. Thank you for listening to the Legal Corner podcast series. For more information, please visit us at our Facebook or Instagram pages or send your comments to thelegalcornerpodcast@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you.